It's time for the show about the people and the places of the Carolinas with the occasional visitors. In addition to hosting the award-winning syndicated TV show Life in the Carolinas, Carl White writes a weekly syndicated column and now hosts this weekly show, the Life in the Carolinas podcast. Now you can hear the story about the stories. And now here's your host, Carl White.
Michael Unruh, it's so good to see you.
You too, Carl. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, I don't have to ask. I know you've been on the road for Foundation Forward this year, right?
Yes, I have.
So let's talk. First of all, let's tell people the big news, and then we'll get into all the backstories, which are incredible this year. But there's something really big that's happened for Foundation Forward this year. Before you give that real big secret up, not a secret anymore, but tell people real quick what Foundation Forward is all about and then what you just accomplished.
All right. So Foundation Forward is a 501c3 educational nonprofit started by Vance and Mary Jo Patterson from Morganton, North Carolina. And it is an educational organization that builds replicas of the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Civil Rights Amendments in Charters of Freedom displays in communities across the country.
And not, when you say replicas, we're not just talking small scale, right?
No, we're not. These are full-scale replicas that are built to look just like the settings in Washington, D.C. in the National Archives. They are roughly the same scale, except instead of the paper documents, they are laser engraved on bronze tablets.
I love your story. I love Foundation Forward and all it stands for. Let's tell everybody real quick the big news, the big thing that just happened. I don't know if you guys are as excited as we are because we're like, holy cow.
Yes.
What just happened?
Well, our organization is just a little over 10 years old, and just this past Thursday, we dedicated our 50th setting nationwide.
Wow.
So
that's a big deal.
Yes.
Let's now talk about what that means. I mean, I think it's exciting because the only place that you could have this experience prior to Foundation Forward's life-size dedications was in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
And that's been 50 times now, right?
Yes, actually 51 as of yesterday. We've already moved on to the next 50 and started with number 51.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, let's talk about the significance of 50.
So when our organization was started, it was based off of an experience that Vance and Mary Jo had by visiting the National Archives in Washington, D.C. And they were just so overcome with emotion at seeing those original documents, our Declaration of Independence, our United States Constitution and Bill of Rights, that they were moved to tears by the experience. And they thought to themselves, why were they in their 60s? And that was the first time that they had seen these in person. And how many people never have that opportunity? You know, a lot of schools aren't taking field trips to Washington, D.C. anymore. Most people never make it to the National Archives to see those. And they started thinking of a way that they could give that back to their community, to share that experience. And so they went back to Morganton, North Carolina, and eventually came up with the idea of building a full-scale replica on the lawn of the historic courthouse in downtown Morganton. And that was the only one that they planned on doing at that time. But other communities saw what they were doing and started getting interested. They ended up putting one in Murphy, North Carolina, over in Cherokee County. Then they put one in Asheville in Buncombe County. And then they wanted to give back, kind of go back to their roots. So Mary Jo's childhood home was Jacksonville, Illinois, so they built a setting there. And Vance's childhood home was Kokomo, Indiana, so they built a setting there. And they have a family business in Blythewood, South Carolina, in the Columbia, South Carolina area.
They make fans, right?
They do, yes. Patterson Fan Company. Vance owns a number of businesses, but that's the main one there. They're kind of all headquartered in that general area. And so they wanted to give back to that Columbia, South Carolina area as well. And so as a gift from all of the employees of Patterson Fan and the other companies, they donated a setting to Columbia, South Carolina. And it just grew from there. And it was never intended to be a long-term project, but once they realized that other communities wanted these, it turned into a short-term goal of putting one in all 100 counties of North Carolina and then all 46 counties of South Carolina, with a long-term goal of hopefully one day placing one of these settings in all 3,142 counties, boroughs, and parishes in the entire United States.
Wow, which is absolutely amazing.
It is.
We first became aware of Foundation Forward, I guess formally in Lenoir at the dedication ceremony there.
Yes.
But that was formally. Informally, years before that, just after the dedication in Morganton, that year, the year after that dedication, for the History Festival that was in Morganton, my producer that day, this is for Life in the Carolinas TV, come up to me. I was talking to some vendors there. I think a guy carving something. And he says, hey, I found a great place to do the open for this segment. He says, it's in front of the Constitution. I said, we can't go to Washington. And he said, no, it's up here beside the courthouse. And I'm like, oh. I walked over to see the settings, and it was the first time I had seen them, first time I knew they existed. And for them to be so large and so grand, wow, what an impression. So your first setting was on the show long before I even knew the name of the organization, I knew anything. So it made its presence on the show then. And we talked about it quite often, about how impressive that setting was. But I didn't know Vance and Mary Jo at that time.
Yeah, well, it is still one of our showpiece settings. Granite facade right there on the lawn of the beautiful historic courthouse. And, as I said before, they didn't have a long-term plan at that point, but reaching the milestone of 50, that's a dream come true. A dream that they didn't even know they had from the beginning.
Sure.
And now we're very proud of that.
Does that help you see 100 then in North Carolina? I mean, all 50 of those are not in North Carolina yet, but there's some great progress and great stride being made in North Carolina and South Carolina now. So is it easier once you've got that 50 to see further?
Absolutely. In fact, it took us a decade to do our first 50, and we may very well reach the second 50 next year.
Wow.
Yes, we're well on the way.
Talk about, if you would, Mike, that experience. I mean, obviously there's the personal experience for Vance and Mary Jo, because the majority of these first 50 they've paid for.
Yes.
Right? So that's come out of, I guess, their kids' inheritance. So I don't know how excited they are, but I think there are a lot of communities around the country who are very excited about that. So now it's growing beyond that. More people are getting involved and want to be part of it. But talk about, if you will, because you've been there from the beginning, right?
I've been on the board since the beginning, yes.
So talk about some of those experiences. Just pick a few communities. Just pick one and share that, walk through that experience with us, not just the mechanics of it, but how a community has been impacted and, champions of that community, how they got involved, why, just give us some backstory there.
Okay, absolutely. So sometimes we reach out to a community, and that'll start with reaching out to the county manager usually and going from there, trying to do a presentation to the county commissioners.
Right.
If the setting is going to be located within city limits, it might be the city manager or the mayor. But we try to find that key person in the community to act as what we call a champion. And sometimes it just might be a citizen of the community who's interested in what we do and wants to bring a Charters of Freedom setting to their home community. So whoever that champion is, we work with them to set up a presentation to the governing body that will approve a letter of intent and select a site where they want the setting to go in their community. Now, there are some parameters for that. It needs to be a site that is accessible to the public pretty much 365 days a year. It needs to have bus parking so that students can take field trips. And it also needs to be someplace that is central to the community. It doesn't have to be in the center of the community, but we want these settings to be in a place where the community normally goes to celebrate things like 4th of July, Veterans Day, Christmas, etc.
So people are automatically going to go there, and the settings would be very relevant
Absolutely.
to those people.
Yes.
Have you? I just want to ask you questions as we go,
Sure.
because let's take one of those communities. I remember we were with you in Culpeper, right?
Yes.
And I was impressed by not only the dedication, but the people who were involved in making that happen. Because part of this is some in-kind contributions that come from the community. That can happen. But there was one particular person that I kept hearing you say over and over, well, so-and-so's taking care of that. And somebody that I would merely expect to be a local champion, they were actually putting their own money into helping do even more with the dedication. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So that person you're speaking about, his name is Keith Price.
That's right.
And I call him one of our super champions. In Culpeper, Virginia, we were fortunate to be included in a project that was already planned for their local park. And of course, many people have heard about the Culpeper Minutemen. And they have a Culpeper Minutemen chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. And they were building a monument to the Culpeper Minutemen in this park.
Right.
And they wanted a Charters of Freedom setting to be sitting in this circular area opposite of their monument with the United States flag in the middle of this circle. So we loved the idea. We generally aren't part of other projects like that, but we couldn't pass up that opportunity. And normally our settings in communities are based on a brick facade with a cast stone concrete top. And our local champion there, Keith Price, wanted the top to be granite that matched the Sons of the American Revolution setting. And so he actually paid nearly $50,000 out of his own pocket to purchase the granite and get it carved and polished and everything to go on that.
Okay, so I imagine there was a moment of excitement within himself. I said, okay, I need to do granite on this. So, a lot of times we do a give. We take care of something. And then later we're like, was that the right thing to do? Tell me about Keith's follow-up conversations with you and how that played out.
Well, everything that Keith did and continues to do for our organization has been positive. He and his wife are so happy that they did that. They are constantly posting things on Facebook about the Charters of Freedom. They get the community involved. They have since had 4th of July ceremonies there. They've had Veterans Day celebrations there. They've had school field trips there. They've had reenactors that have interacted with the public there in front of the setting. And Keith was actually honored by the local news media as Culpeper Citizen of the Year for his involvement in the project.
Nice.
So he's very happy with it. He said that he would absolutely do it again, and he continues to encourage other communities in that area to get their own Charters of Freedom setting. And one of them has already signed up to do that.
Oh, that's fantastic. When I listen to this story and I'm hearing you tell the story, and I'd heard this story before, and I met Keith, but just in thinking about this journey and what you're telling me now, this report you're sharing, lets us know that this truly is a setting now of the people. Not only the documents of people, but now it's been embraced by an entire community.
Absolutely.
You have a few families, and they're like, well, we really want to help out in a big way. But then everybody's getting involved. So this thing that was made for all of us, right, is now being celebrated in Culpeper. It's not that far to Washington, but it's in Culpeper now. It's in their own town. They get to go there, and it's a regular part of their daily lives.
Absolutely. And we get that feedback from communities all over the country. We are on the Google search where anytime an article comes up with Foundation Forward or Charters of Freedom, we get notifications. And we see these news articles all of the time about Clark, South Dakota, having a Veterans Day ceremony in front of their setting, or all of the principals and teachers in Morganton, North Carolina, or Wetumpka, Alabama, or various places that start off their school year by having a visit with the superintendent, the principals, the teachers. They all get together around the Charters of Freedom and have a group photo.
But that's
just
perfect,
all
isn't
kinds
it?
of things.
I mean, that's the thing, because Foundation Forward is an educational foundation. And having those people that you just mentioned, those titles, which are in all communities, but having the school system, the government system, the community at large taking ownership and celebrating around our nation's documents.
Absolutely.
That's got to be a powerful situation. I mean, it plants a seed, right?
It really does. Part of my job as I'm going around the country to present to other communities is to stop by existing settings and just check on the status of them, see if the glass needs to be cleaned off or anything like that. And every single time that I'm at one of these settings, I see people walking up to it and bringing their kids up to it, or other family members. They'll see the logo on the side of my vehicle and they'll want to talk about the setting and just how appreciative they are of it being there. And these aren't the leaders of the community. These are just people that are walking through the park.
So you don't have a front person that gets on the phone and calls people in each community and say, "Hey, Mike's coming to town. Why don't you get out and take a look at the settings?" Right? That doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. No. In fact, if they knew I was coming, they might stay away. I don't know.
I think there's that organic thing that's happening is what makes it so wonderful.
Yeah.
And it takes time for that, though, right? I mean, it does take time. The first 10 years, it's establishing, right? But now you've got really great settings and wonderful communities, presidential sites, right?
Absolutely.
You're in presidential sites now with more coming.
Yes.
That's exciting. Talk about that.
All right. So, as you mentioned earlier, it started with Vance and Mary Jo contributing all of the funds needed for these projects. But as it grew and got more popular and we got requests for more of them across the country, we knew that we needed to develop a fundraising wing to our organization. And so we started adding donors pedestals where bronze plaques can be purchased for donations $500 or more.
Right.
But there's also what we call a field of honor in front of the Constitution that is initially blank pavers, but for smaller contributions, people can get engraved pavers, brick or granite.
Oh, sure.
And
in their name or in memory of.
Exactly, their business name, their civic organization, things like that.
Sure.
And they can go to our website, chartersoffreedom.com, for that information. But we've had such an interest across the country that there are people that have donated and purchased those bricks, and they don't even have a setting planned for their community.
Right.
And they're saying, okay, I'm in Denver, Colorado. I want to donate this amount. And whenever a setting comes to Denver, Colorado,
put our name there.
Then you can put my name there.
Right.
I mean,
nice.
So we're getting that level of excitement, and anticipation. And as you mentioned, we've already placed settings in presidential sites. We're at the Benjamin Harrison presidential site in Indianapolis, Indiana. We are in the process of building a setting at the James Madison Museum in Orange, Virginia, which is the location next to Culpeper that I just mentioned.
Right. I love that.
And we've recently been approved to place one on the grounds of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, which will be the first setting in the state of California. And it will actually be within about 20 or 30 feet of the burial site and memorial of President and Nancy Reagan.
Oh, what a wonderful thing. I always thought that when that concept, I first heard it talked about. That's a wonderful idea because these are our presidents. And it's not political. It's just this is the hey, look, if you get in office, then you get some applause. Right?
That's right.
Whoever
yes.
you are, it doesn't really matter because that's always changing and shifting. But a lot of people go to visit our presidential sites.
They do, yes.
So we know those numbers. So once again, it's driving viewership to our founding documents, to our citizens.
Absolutely. And we've had other presidential sites, the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Library in Massachusetts. We have someone who is in talks with the Jimmy Carter Presidential Site down in Georgia.
Nice.
So yeah, everyone, and we are apolitical. It doesn't, the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, Civil Rights Amendments, they are for all Americans.
Right.
And so is our organization and what we do.
We love that. That's wonderful. So you've got 50. Now you're going to 100, right?
Yes.
And then 150, and then 200.
That's right.
What do you imagine the time schedule is? Looking at the Carolinas, so you've had some good movement with some additional support for North Carolina, quite specifically.
Yes.
So, what does that schedule look like, and how do people who do not already have a setting in their county, how do they find out more about the program?
Okay. Well, as far as moving to 100 in North Carolina, we've already started that. We actually dedicated our 51st setting nationwide yesterday in Sparta, North Carolina, Allegheny County.
Right.
And that was the 30th different county in North Carolina.
Right.
We have also recently received some funding from the North Carolina legislature, which will help offset some of the cost of additional settings.
Right.
And that will allow us to at least build 15 more next year.
Right.
But our goal is the remaining 70 counties that we have in North Carolina, as well as the remaining 44 counties in South Carolina, because we've already placed 2 settings there. We would like to have all of those complete by July 4th, 2026, which will be the
Wow, that's wonderful.
250th birthday of our country.
Oh, wow. What a great landmark. So the goal now, the goal from today until July the 4th,
2026.
2026.
Yes.
Well, that's just a few years away,
It
right?
is, yes.
Just a few years away. Do you have let's imagine that communities are going to be involved and everybody's going to come to the forefront. Do you have the manpower to make all that happen?
Well, we get help from the local communities.
Okay.
So we have some very generous sponsors of our organization that have donated concrete in various areas, that have donated bricks, that have donated electrical work or masonry work.
Sure.
We have even worked with students from Caldwell County high schools or community college students in some areas that are in masonry programs with those schools.
So it becomes a school project then?
Absolutely, yeah, or
Nice.
a community project. So we work with individuals in the community, our champion, and then if they form a committee, we ask them to reach out to these local, to the schools or to the contractors or whoever, and if they want to donate their work and be part of the project, of course, we're going to recognize them by being on a donor's plaque. But we've even had some that have told us, I'm a general contractor. I have all of the subcontractors under what I do. If you send me the blueprints and give me some guidance, I'm going to build this entire thing for you, no charge.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
And-
fantastic.
And so, if a community wants to get involved, first thing they need to do is just reach out to us. Just get the ball rolling, get a presentation made and a site selected and a letter of intent signed. And then we'll figure out when it's going to get built and how it's going to get built
Right.
after that.
So we have that process. So to give everybody an idea of how long it takes from the time you start the process, in other words, here's the first email or phone call to your home office, and to the time that it's actually ground is broken,
Sure.
right? What's that normally like?
Well, That question's a lot easier to answer now that we're past COVID, because there were certainly some delays, and then we had a backlog of projects. But moving forward, I would say that the entire process probably takes between 6 months and a year. And that's from the first phone call to scheduling a board meeting, getting on the agenda, doing a presentation, everything like that. The construction process itself, from actually breaking ground until the setting is completed, can be done as quickly as 3 weeks. But of course, we always like to add, we like to say 6 to 8 weeks, just because you never know with the weather and contractors' schedules and things like that. But the entire process, 6 to 9 months, is a comfortable cushion.
It moves pretty quickly then.
It does, yeah. And we've had some, like I said, that have been done in less than 8 weeks. We've had some that have taken a number of years just for a change in site, or a change in the facade that they wanted, or different things like that.
Right.
But
the country wasn't built in a day, right?
That's right. And these settings are built to last 300 to 500 years. So it's worth taking a few extra weeks or months to get it right from the very beginning.
Sure. Yeah. And those are engineers who have made those comments that it's going to last 300 to 400 years.
Yes. So these are rebar-enforced concrete cores on a rebar-enforced concrete foundation that goes 3 feet into the ground. They are solid, and they are built to last.
Nice. Okay, so that's pretty darn exciting. You've traveled all over the country now, right?
Yes.
I think I talked to you a few weeks ago. You were in California.
Yes.
But, Michael, many, many months ago, you went to Alaska.
Yes.
So there was a dedication in Alaska, right?
There was, in Wasilla, Alaska.
Wasilla, Alaska. And you were traveling on a road, and you had an encounter with local wildlife, right?
I did.
Well, we have to share that now.
Okay. Well, every trucker out there can probably relate to this story, that if you're on the road all of the time, wildlife runs in front of you. And I have literally been at a complete standstill in the highway for deers, dogs, cats, cows, ducks, geese, turkeys, burros in Nevada.
Right.
And in all of those experiences, I have been able to avoid everything. I don't know if I mentioned cows that escaped from a farm, and a bull.
Right.
Absolutely. In the middle of the road that I'm driving down, all of these things. And I've avoided every single one of them except one. The day before our dedication ceremony in Wasilla, Alaska,
which is not an easy place to get to.
It is not. It is not. And when you are driving down Glacier Highway and a 900-pound moose runs out in front of you, there are really only 3 options.
Yeah.
Go into oncoming traffic, go off a cliff, or hit your brakes and hope for the best.
Yes.
And that's the option I took, but unfortunately, my rental car and the moose did not survive.
It didn't go
But
well.
I did, thankfully.
But I guess for people that aren't familiar with a moose, they're really tall.
They are, yes.
I mean, a 900-pound moose is going to be taller than your car.
It was. So fortunately, I kind of went under it, and it rolled the car, and I felt absolutely terrible, but I had no other option.
You survived.
Yeah, I did.
You survived.
Yes, just some
and
cuts and bruises.
And local people helped, right?
They did. So fortunately, a local Parks and Rec person who had a satellite phone, because there's no cell phone service around there, but someone with a truck and a satellite phone stopped to make sure I was okay, and they called the state troopers. The state troopers have a large territory to cover. I mean, this is Alaska.
Sure.
Most people don't know how big Alaska is.
That's why I want you to share this story, because it really is a story of the vastness of Alaska,
It really is. If you put Alaska over a map of the continental United States, it goes from Florida to Texas to Michigan to New York State.
Wow.
I mean, it's that big.
Yeah.
It's huge. And so the trooper that was on duty that day on the satellite phone said, do you need any medical, asked if I needed any medical assistance. I didn't need any medical assistance. So they were able to contact the tow truck as well as the roadkill maintenance crew that had to come and remove the moose. But the state trooper said that as long as I was okay and no other cars or people were involved, he didn't need to report to the scene of the crime, which was good because he was about 4.5 hours away.
Wow. So just to put it in perspective.
He was the closest one.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yes. So that was very interesting.
Well, you survived, though. You survived.
I did.
And you have a story to tell.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
my goodness.
And not only did I survive, but the tow truck driver got there. It took nearly an hour to get the car onto the back of the flatbed tow truck. As soon as the tow truck driver got out of the truck, when he got there, he said, "We need to hurry because I smell a grizzly bear. A grizzly has caught onto the scent of this moose, and they are nearby."
Did you smell the bear?
I didn't smell the bear.
So his keen sense of awareness of bear aroma
put me
really?
into a panic. And,
okay.
But his definition of "we need to hurry" was still over 45 minutes to get this car onto the back of the truck,
sure,
right?
Sure.
He assured me that we were okay because he had a flare gun if necessary. But then the roadkill recovery
and yet
team,
there's more.
Yet there's more. The roadkill recovery team shows up, and it is this 20-something husband and wife dressed up
right.
with their infant child in a pickup truck
right.
with a camper on the back of it, a camper top, right? And they were on date night, and they were the only recovery unit that was on call for the area.
Wait a minute. So they're sitting there having a nice family dinner, and the phone rings. Hey, we got a moose on the highway.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be there.
So
hopefully they finish dinner, and then they come to your rescue.
They had to go back to her parents' house to get their child.
Yes.
And then bring the child with them out into the Alaskan wilderness.
Okay,
where,
so the child wasn't with them at the restaurant.
Correct. Yeah, the child was with the grandparent.
Okay, because they were on their date night. Okay,
exactly.
Right.
But they had to pick the grandchild up by a certain, or they had to pick their child up by a certain time from their parents' house.
And they knew it would take so long with you, so that would go beyond the time period. Okay, I got it.
Exactly. So now we are trying. I won't go into any gory details, but long story short, they had no way of lifting the moose into the back of this pickup truck that had a camper on the back.
Right.
So we then had to take my car off of the back of the flatbed tow truck, back the tow truck up with the flatbed tilted at an angle. The recovery guy, the tow truck driver, and I had to push this 900-pound moose carcass onto the flatbed truck and then back the flatbed truck to the back of their pickup truck.
Did I see this on the Roadrunners years ago? This sounds like this is a cartoon scene. This didn't really happen, did it?
This really happened.
You got up there and had some Alaskan beer, and you dreamed this, right?
No, this is a true story.
Oh, my God.
Yes. And so we finally get about 2/3 of the moose into the back of this pickup truck.
Right.
And off they go with a third of the moose hanging out the back of the tailgate back to Wasilla.
Right.
And then I'm there for another hour putting the car back on the flatbed tow truck with the tow truck driver. This event happened at about 6:15. This is when I hit the moose.
Right.
I ended up getting back to my hotel room at almost 3:00 in the morning.
How did you get there?
The tow truck driver took me back to my hotel room.
Great.
After dropping off the car at the dump lot, whatever.
Did you get to see those great lights up there during this?
Oh, yes, all of the.
So that was going on. So you had this amazing show going on above you.
We did see the Northern Lights. Yes.
So it was a very surreal experience.
It was, yes.
Wow. How many times have you told this story?
A few.
A few?
Yes.
I would imagine so. Okay, so Vance and Mary Jo, are they on location for the dedication already the next day?
Yes. So I was actually driving to meet them for dinner when I hit the moose.
At the hotel?
Yes.
Okay.
So but I was about an hour away because nothing's close in Alaska.
Right. So hold on a minute. So you call. You eventually.
The tow truck driver had a satellite phone,
and he gives it to you, and you
I call Vance.
Hey, Vance. Yeah, I got something to tell you. Okay,
Yes.
take it from there.
Okay, so as we began the segment with, hey, Vance, this is Mike. I'm running late. Let me tell you why. And he puts me on speakerphone, and I tell Vance and Mary Jo the story. And Mary Jo's laughing, but neither of them are surprised.
No.
Not at all. In fact, I think they would have been more surprised if I wasn't late for some crazy reason. But yes, so I get back to my hotel room covered in moose at 3 a.m.
And they let you in the hotel.
Yeah.
What's that look like?
And have to be cleaned, awake, and dressed by 7 to be at a dedication ceremony to set up at 8 that starts at 9.
So you've had a traumatic experience, to say the least, right?
Yes.
And then you have, 3 hours of sleep?
That, yeah.
Most. 3 hours of sleep because adrenaline's still flowing, even though you're exhausted, I'm sure. And, wow. So you get there. How was the dedication?
It was a wonderful dedication. It was one of the best dedications that we've ever had. The governor of Alaska was there. The Army band was there. The
Nice.
high school state championship band that performed in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade in New York was there performing. We had honor guard. We had all branches of the service represented. We had a veteran who was 98 years old, was the oldest member in the crowd. And then we had, I believe, some infants or toddlers that were there. So nearly 100 years of people in the crowd,
Wow.
age range.
That's incredible.
Fantastic.
Did anyone find out about the moose?
Everyone knew about the moose.
Okay,
Yes.
so now you're up because you get to talk at these, right?
Yes.
So you go up and you talk and says, well, folks, and then in my mind, what's happening is you're telling this story. I got run over by a moose, and then half the people say, I know I've been run over by a moose too. Did that happen?
Absolutely. Everyone there was just like, oh yeah, that happens.
Yeah,
here,
that
you know.
happened.
In fact, when the truck driver told me, or when we were in the car riding back, or in the truck riding back, he said, yeah, this is the 7th call that I've had this week. And it was only like Wednesday or something.
Oh, moose encounter.
Yeah. And I wasn't the first one that day.
Oh.
It's just crazy. You
Wow.
know, you never know. And
Well, we don't have many of those moose encounters in the Carolinas.
No.
So we have black bears now that like to
Yes.
visit people in their cars.
they're on my list of
Yeah.
being in the road in front of me,
Yeah.
yes. In fact, our organization has a text thread, and the title of the text of the group chat is just seriously in all
Right.
capital letters
Right.
with about 10 question marks.
Right.
And that is where I post pictures every time I'm stopped in a road by wildlife. So,
Right.
yes.
You know, I mean, listening to this story, there's a piece of it that takes me back to the founding of our nation. You know, our founding fathers, our pioneers, they were out really, chartering some territory that could be considered wild, but it was just nature, right?
Absolutely.
So you have reconnected with that, it sounds like, to a degree,
Yes.
which means you're traveling in a lot of smaller communities in America. You're having an experience with a lot of people who probably love our country and love our documents. Is that right?
Absolutely. I love what I do, the places that I get to go and the people
Yeah.
that I get to meet. I mean, all over. Like, we have projects going on in Daytona Beach, Florida. We were in Wetumpka, Alabama, Vermont, New Hampshire.
Right.
I mean, all the way out to Alaska, California. We recently just dedicated a setting in Tonopah, Nevada, which is in the middle of the desert. I mean,
Right.
it's 4.5 hours north of Las Vegas, 4.5 hours south of Reno. The only way that you can get there is to fly to one of those places and drive that distance. It is out there by Area 51 in the middle of nowhere.
But all you have to watch out for are the scorpions there. So
Or the burros that go out in the highway in front of you. Yes, I have a group.
But they don't usually attack you.
No, they don't. They don't
just
attack. Yes.
look at you.
Yes. I have a group photo of the burros literally walking in the highway in front of my car.
Right.
Just, same direction. Like they just came in from the side, turned, and said, "Oh, we're going this way now."
Yeah.
So,
well, it's good
fun
enough
times.
for you, right? So,
but
good enough.
The people are wonderful. They truly are. I mean, we have worked with people like we're sponsored locally or nationally or endorsed by VFW, American Legion, SAR, DAR, Carolinas Freedom Foundation. We've had members of our steering committees who are members of the NAACP, Chamber of Commerce, 4-H clubs. I mean, all kinds of civic groups, all members of the community, and it is just incredible to see how all of these people just love this country.
See, that's what I think is a wonderful observation with your organization. There's not always, every day is not a great day in the world because of things that happen, but it's more because of our response to those things that happen. But you're in a very unique position, Mike, because you're basically the front guy, right? So you're out there and you're seeing people who do care. They're not people that don't have issues,
Right.
Heck, half the people in Alaska deal with the moose. So it's not really like they don't have their issues as well to deal with, but there's this love and appreciation for the value of our founding documents that make it such an important thing. Have you ever, I know what you do is tiring because you're always traveling and that's physically demanding, but do you sometimes just stop and think of the awe of all of this and how significantly important it could be and the number of people that could be impacted, the number of students who just one student visiting one of these settings and they get inspired. Maybe they can't read all the writing. We're like, well, what does that say, Mom? What does that say? And then they can go and they've got their phones or their computers. They can learn all about it, right? But if that starts that process, have you thought about that, what your life is doing, what Vance and Mary Jo's life are doing, what all the people who are involved, of the significance of this work?
Absolutely. I think about that all the time. I mean, what Vance and Mary Jo started and continue to do with this organization, I can't wait for us to have at least one setting in every state. And that's part of my mission is to make that happen. But going to these communities where we've been or where we're getting ready to start a project and just seeing the excitement on everyone's face. Our dedication ceremony in Sparta yesterday, we had a young lady, I would say probably elementary school or middle school age, who sang the national anthem. And we've had groups of kindergarten kids who led the Pledge of Allegiance. And they're all, they're in their little suits and dresses, with the American flag in their pocket and everything. And it's amazing because we're not just building these settings and leaving the community. We have an educational program. We have an education director, Dr. David Streeter, who continues to reach out to these communities and work with the superintendent and the principals to encourage field trips and different educational opportunities. We have some supplemental educational materials like word finds and crossword puzzles and things that we'll give to the kids to accompany them on their visit. And then we also place these plaques on the tops of the documents that can actually be used for rubbings if you just put a white piece of paper and with a chalk or crayon, things like that. So we try to make it as an interactive experience if we can, but so many other members of our communities that we're in, they have family or friends in other places that have reached out to us and literally said, my sister or my cousin or my brother, whoever, got one of these in their home community, and I went to visit them over Christmas, and they took us to the setting to show it to us. And as soon as I went back home, I called the mayor and said, "Look at these. I need your email.
Right.
I need to send these pictures to you, and we need one of these in our setting. And that's part of the reason why we're in so many states now and have so many more planned in the very near future.
Nice. So with what you have planned now, so in North Carolina you have 30...
we have 32 settings in 30 different counties.
Okay.
Yes.
30 counties are covered in North Carolina now.
Yes.
So with the things that you have in the works currently, because we know we only have a couple of years to meet this big number. So how many do you have in the works now that you reasonably feel good about? Okay, well, that's going to give us another blank. What's that number?
Yes. So we already have around 15 that are already in the works, under construction. Some construction is completed. We just haven't dedicated them yet. Our next dedication is on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, in Carteret County, over in Beaufort, North Carolina.
Down the coast.
So that setting is complete. We're getting ready to dedicate that. And there are a number of other settings that are already well into the construction process. And then with the funding that I mentioned earlier, we'll be able to add another 15 just next year on top of those that are already in the works. That you already
have, right.
So by the end of next year, we should probably have doubled the number of completed settings in North Carolina.
Right. So you'll be between 60 and 70 by the end of next year.
Absolutely. And then that'll just put us, very close to our goal to reach that July 4th, 2026.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a wonderful visit, Mike. I really wanted us to do this at the end of the year. I'm visiting with a lot of people now. We're going to the holiday season, and the trees are up, and a lot of people look to the holidays and Christmas as a time of gratitude, of a time of getting and receiving gifts, but also it's a sad time for a lot of people as well because they've lost people, or whatever the reason might be.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's mental health, which is a very real thing. But what a wonderful reminder with Foundation Forward and what you're doing is this work of perpetuating our wonderful country. And it is wonderful. I think it's fair. Our founding fathers realized that it wasn't a perfect document. It was a document to evolve and the message to continue to grow. And it has over the years.
It certainly has. And that is why they put in the writing of the document the ability to amend it.
Yes. And
to make these changes. It is not an old, outdated document from over 200 years ago. It's alive. It is something that is our country. It's the thread that weaves our country together, and it grows with us and adapts, and that's what the amendments are for, from the civil rights amendments to women's suffrage and beyond.
That's right. Wow. Well, my goodness, Mike, this has been great. I was looking forward to our visit because I knew you had been up to some great things. You survived the moose. I fully expect, so next year, my goal is to do this at the end of every year. The last quarter, I want to visit with everyone who's doing great things in the Carolinas and the country, right?
Absolutely.
We can't wait to hear about your encounters, probably by that time, at least alligators and some other type of creature you're going to come face to face with. Bigfoot. Oh my gosh. Hey, don't run over Bigfoot, please.
I will add you to our chat thread so you can see all of the pictures and be included.
See all the things. Great. Anything else you want to share with people?
I would. If there are communities out there who are interested in getting one of these settings, please feel free to contact our website, chartersoffreedom.com. You can email me directly. That's info, I-N-F-O, at chartersoffreedom.com. And please reach out to us. If you are interested in putting a committee together, we have had scouts work on putting this together as part of their Eagle Scout project. We've had VFWs and American Legions that have wanted to put it together, chambers of commerce, different things like that. So if you're a civic organization out there and you want to bring this to your community, or if you're a member of the local government who wants to bring this in, please contact me, contact our office, and we'll get the ball rolling.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. This has been great.
Thank you.
Hey, don't worry. We always have an extra 5 minutes built in for our visit. So you don't have to be on time.
Okay.
Mike
Perfect.
time is at play.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
It's great
a lot,
to be
Mike.
here.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Life in the Carolinas podcast. If you enjoyed your time with us, please visit the show's website at lifeinthecarolinas.com. Join our mailing list, and we'll keep you updated every week on what we have coming up and other interesting things around the Carolinas. We value you as a podcast subscriber. We'll see you next week. And remember what Carl says, it's never a bad time for a good story.